Okay, so we're live. Welcome to the Drumming Career Podcast number 4. I took last week off. I was exhausted from all the hard work I've been doing. Actually, I do have 2 gigs this weekend, which is extremely rare. I haven't had back-to-back gigs in I don't know how long, but that will be exciting. I'll probably need to take another week off after that. But anyways, if you want to get caught up on the podcast, you can go to joegoretti.com/podcast and check out the last interviews. They were really insightful and entertaining and educational, just like this week's is sure to be as well. I'm super excited to have this guest. Um, he is a songwriter. He plays keys. He's a singer. He's a drummer. And sometimes he does it all at the same time. He's also had a very impressive career as a sideman as well as a leader. The past few years, he's gotten a lot of attention for his project, a duo project called Paris Monster. Here he is, Josh Dion. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Joe. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. This is cool.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. So, where are you coming at us from today?
Ringwood, New Jersey.
Ringwood, New Jersey. Whereabouts is Ringwood, New Jersey?
It's kind of the beginning of the Ramapo mountain range. It's right on the New York State border, but it's in New Jersey. It's a Passaic County, and it's a place that I discovered when I was at William Patterson. I used to just drive around and I don't know, wander, and I discovered Ringwood for hiking, and I think one day I randomly found that there was a botanical gardens there, and I was like, what the hell is this? And it was like, yeah, it's like a botanical gardens that no one, I mean, people go there, but like, it's not crowded. It's really, it's like your own little special place. And I was like, what the hell is this? And so now I live walking distance to that place.
Excellent.
Dreams do come true.
They come true, man, and they're happening. You're living the dream.
Yeah.
So our paths have crossed a million times. We played with a bunch of the same people, but I really don't know that much about you. Where are you from originally?
Okay, I'm from Storrs, Connecticut. It's it's a great college town east of Hartford, for Route 84. The area is right between Boston and New York, a little closer to Boston, and other than the university, there isn't much there, in terms of music. But there is like a music scene that I think still exists and existed when I was really young, because in a neighboring town, it was right on the border of let me clarify. I'm from Storrs, but it's also part of a town called Mansfield. And right on the border of Mansfield and this city called Willimantic, there was a club called the Shaboo. And it's a famous club that burned down. And I was 2 years old when it burned down. So I have no memory of it, but it, was a fantastic place. Like everybody played there. Everybody, all the blues legends, B.B. King, Freddie King, Johnny Winter, the Police, with their first tour played there. Miles Davis in the 70s played there. Tom Waits played there. And the Shaboo All-Stars played there, which was like a local, band of fellas that ran the club. And my dad played drums in that band.
Okay, so your dad was a drummer too. That's how
Yeah. And my dad and his brother also. And I grew up around music. There was like a lot of like bar band blues type sounds around me when I was growing up, and a lot of it had to do, I think, with remnants of what that club was and the nightlife. It was a cool place that, so I think that's really in me. It's in my DNA, kind of just being raised around that. You know what I mean? So that was a huge part of my upbringing before I even knew it.
Okay, so you mentioned that your dad was a drummer. Was that what came first for you? Because you're also, you're a multi-instrumentalist, you're a singer. It was drums first?
Absolutely. I mean, anything I've ever gotten has come from the drums. You know what I mean? It that's where it all stems from. You know, my dad was super cool. He's a real, like, he's gifted mechanically. So we always had nice vintage drums around the house, and he took care of them. And so, you know, I was really lucky to be able to play when I was super young, and to watch him and to learn. And like, you know, he'd like teach me rudiments and like shit like that. So always drums, always drums. I dreamt of being a singer. I always could play piano a little bit. I had some great teachers along the way. But a lot of that stuff didn't really come into my whole vibe until I was older.
Okay. Was your dad like did you go to another teacher outside of your dad, or was it just basically your dad teaching you?
Basically, my dad. I didn't take private lessons. I mean, like I did at certain times. I would take like random lessons with people, but I never studied with one person. But he did. There was a local music teacher who taught in the middle school named Catherine Nemasic, who I really give all the credit to. I was in the fourth grade, and she called us to invite me to come play in the beginning band. Now, I didn't read music. I wasn't raised. I still suck at it, you know, and I remember I would learn the songs, and she would have me play drum set, but it would be with the concert band, you know, with the full, and she'd let me play drum set.
Oh, great.
And I didn't know that when she would go like that, that meant the song was over. You know what I mean? So I would just keep fucking playing. It's like you have to stop when I do that. I mean, it was like it was like stuff like that. Like I knew nothing. Like I really, you know, I had no clue.
But you had a feel. You had a great feel. You kept time, and you
Right.
had all of that.
So she was the one who got me interested in piano. She taught me the 12 keys. She started to train my ear a little bit. She got me on the vibraphone. Honestly, man, if it weren't for her, you know, and I learned that shit at a time in my life where like I was young enough still. It's like learning a language.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you learn that shit at a certain time. Honestly, most of what I play on the piano is still things that I learned from her. I actually have a hard time, you know, setting myself down and like shedding that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, obviously I'm still learning and we're still growing, but like the foundation she gave me. So I always give her props for that. And that was one of the great things that came out of that situation.
Excellent. And one more time, what was her name?
Catherine Nemasic.
Catherine Nemasic. Well, we're all thankful that she encouraged you, and now we have you, and all that you've brought and are continuing to bring. So great. So you got inspired. You had somebody that saw something special in you and fostered that. And so you were doing piano and vibes and all that. When did the vocals start happening?
You know, man, I mean, I actually found some tapes because my dad used to record me. Some tapes, I think I was about 3 or 4, singing and playing Allman Brothers songs. I mean, I sound just like a little kid. Like you can, you know, but you can tell what song it is loosely. And it never happened again until I went to church. I got into this church when I was about 12, 13 years old. And that was like a huge pinnacle in my life, kind of like a crazy moment I went through where I was born again. And I went to this Pentecostal church that was like just deep, man, deep, without like getting really into it, you know, for me. And I would watch the singers and just be like, how is this happening? You know?
Yeah.
You know, and I swear that like, and I can still feel it, man. I used to just be like, and I remember not being able to sing at all. Like I tried, you know, and I had a girlfriend and some friends when I was in high school who got me to join the choir. And it kind of just started to naturally happen for me. You know, and it just, I don't know, man. I just kept singing, even if it was rough around the edges. And then into my early 20s, I started to do bar gigs, and I remember being like super afraid of the microphone. And it took years. I mean, it's taken this entire time for me to finally be somewhat comfortable with my voice. and it's crazy, you know, but I
You
still go
never, you
back.
never gave me that impression, man. You
No.
always were. Anytime you would get up and sing and play, you didn't seem like you were the least bit shy about it, man. It was,
Oh, thanks, man.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
will say it's singing is a crazy thing. I mean, it's like, you know, I've learned so much. Like I even think about how hard I used to, you know, hurt myself. I would push too hard, and like all the techniques involved, and the, you know, just there's so much to it, man. It's like,
Are you
you know,
pretty much self-taught with all that, or did you wind up going to a trainer?
yeah, I take one lesson with somebody, you know. I think that I'm kind of stubborn, and I'm not saying I'm unteachable in any way, but I will say, like, things that people said to me that I didn't get at the time, like 10 years later, I kind of discover it, and I'm like, oh, that's what that was.
Right.
You know, things about, like, you know, expanding your diaphragm and like your air, and like not pushing too hard, and like not having your neck be tense and all that kind of shit. You know, singer stuff. Like, it's I don't know. Some people have to find their own way, and there's so many types of singers. You know, I mean, I there's a lot of singers I love out there who probably do not sing right. You know, so it's a physicality. It's like drums. You got, that's why I love the two together. I think that they're perfect for each other.
I agree, and I think in when I watch you, because I've seen you do some other I think workshops about singing and playing, right? Like
Yeah.
you did some things like lessons with that. And to me, it always seemed like with you, they were one and the same. Like you're not doing two separate things. It's an extension of yourself. It's all one thing. At least that's how it comes across to me. Is that how
It's
you feel?
oh yeah, it's almost better. It's like it's like kind of harder to be up front singing without the drums. You
Really?
know,
Okay.
oh my God, yeah. I mean, you might get a note out that you couldn't get out behind the kit because you're standing up, and I don't know, maybe you might not hurt yourself. Whereas with drums, you're physical, so it's kind of like, you know, you have to conserve. But for me, it's like the drums and the vocals, they just kind of go together. I think everybody has it, actually. I really do. Like, I think that it's a thing that anyone can have. Um, you know, and it's just like, even if we were to work on singing rhythms while playing drums, I mean, it's going to expand your vocabulary and your independence.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, it's like the voice is like the fifth limb. You know what I mean? Because it's like a whole other thing you're doing. But the cool thing is it could also sustain while you're doing other stuff underneath it, and you know, it's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's like the first and second instruments, right? I mean, it's drums and
exactly.
voice. It's as human as it gets, right?
I feel like I when I say that, I'm like, you're being cheesy by saying that, but it's so true. It really is true. It's like, uh, you know, it's more common than we think, and it has been here. It's always been here, and then we say at the bar, "Oh my God, I never see a singing drummer." It's like, what are you talking about? That's it's everything.
Right. That's great.
You know? Yeah.
So you, as far as some of your influences, you're a big Levon Helm fan, right?
Dude, yeah. I mean, let me tell you about the band. I did not grow up knowing anything but the weight. I knew nothing. We had one record. That is a mature, developed sound. And I was lucky enough. Now, you know, I had kind of started singing and drumming, but like I didn't know shit about the band. And then my freshman year of college, my good friend Vinny Speranza, who's a great drummer and one of the people I love to talk about music with. He's a scholar, you know. Anyway, he's also super into the band. So he says, "Hey, you want to come up to my house, upstate New York, for Thanksgiving this year?" Oh, sure. You know, okay. So we get in the car. He puts on the band, and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" You know. And so that just began the whole journey of discovering the band, and it became tributes to the band and learning band songs. And and oh my God, I want to, you know, play like Levon, or like Levon is like, or just like getting to see Levon in person one time, or like, oh my God, this is how Richard Manuel plays the piano. Like this is, you know, all these, everything about the band. And I still, yeah, you know, it's like, it never gets old to me. And,
Yeah.
and I'm lucky enough to get to play with some folks who have played in that organization, and to be around any part of that is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's in Woodstock, right? Is that where you were, up at the barn there, the farm?
Yeah, I got to, you know, play one time Levon's drums, and I didn't really know too many people. Like now I play with Jim Weeder, I play with Brian Mitchell, I play with a lot of the cats, you know, Larry Campbell. Like I've played with the cats who played with Levon, you know, and so it's like singing those tunes with them, and they're like, here's a list of songs, and I'm just like, dude, I know these songs already. Like you don't have to worry. Like, you know, I really do. Trust me.
That's amazing. They must love you, man.
Yeah, it was a good fit, you know. But
Oh,
even still, I mean, it got deeper. Like I finally like clocked the tempos and like checked out like exactly what was going on, and like, you know, at least tried to, you know, and so that was like a whole other. It got even deeper. Then there's the songwriting. You know, I mean, it's like everything. You know.
songwriting. Well, there we go. That's a good segue. That's a good
Yeah.
showbiz segue. So you're a songwriter. You've been a songwriter, as far as I know, for as long as I've known you, right? The first time that I heard of you, or where our worlds came into contact, was the Bitter End, and there was the Josh Dion band,
Yes, sir.
circa 2003, four, something like that. Does that sound about right?
I was right when it all started. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You know, okay. So what happened was, I mean, I always wrote little songs when I was a kid. You know, but what what happened was I was in a band called Ulu, which was like this cool kind of headhunters vibe, jammy, cool band that I was in for a while, and I really loved it. Brian Colleen was playing bass in that band actually, and so I was on the road with them, and Scott Chaslin, who you might know also, great keyboard player, was writing songs, and he was like writing lyrics in the van, and so I kind of just saw him doing that, and I thought, yo, man, I want to get into this, you know. So I bought a journal and started doing that kind of stuff, and so basically that was when I wrote the songs to the first album, like on the road with that band, and yeah,
You wrote a
songwriter.
whole album. Like the first thing you did when you decided was to
Well,
start.
no, I'm just saying it wasn't like that, but I'm
Okay.
just saying like all of those, whatever I wrote down in that book became and collaborative with everybody else. You know, I mean, it was like a lot of those songs were 50-50 with other members of the band and stuff. Dan Heineman and I wrote the majority of that material together. A lot of the songs I wrote by myself too, on that first album. You know, and that was kind of my first. You know, I got a manager, and like, you know, the whole everything seemed like it was happening, and it was like, you know, it was however the hell, early 20s, and Bitter End. God, I freaking love that place. That was,
Yeah.
you know, that's like hollow ground for me, man. I really love those people.
Yeah. And that was when we were, that was the scene at that time. That was when I first moved to New York, and there was
Right.
that clique you talked about, Brian Colleen and Pat Firth and Chrissy Poland and everybody down there. And then we had Swang and Alyssa
Yeah.
B and all those people, and and we were doing like the RSP project, all that stuff. That was
Yeah.
happening. Those were the
It was
days.
really cool. And it's so funny because it's like, just like everything, I wish I could go back and appreciate it even more than I did now. Cause I think about it now and I'm like, that was cool. You know?
I know. I feel the same way. I really do, man. There were a lot of times, and I kick myself now because it's like, there were times when I'd be like, oh, I got to go play the Bitter End at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and find parking with the drunks and the idiots, and then schlep my drums through the drunks and the idiots. And then you go up and you get to play, and it was, you playing at this legendary place with cool people, and it was always, a cool vibe. But
Yeah.
I wish I would have appreciated it more when I was living it, for sure.
You, you and me both. You and me both.
So that was your first project as a leader, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. That was my first project as a leader. Being a leader, you know, it's overrated. Uh, and I don't know how good of a leader I ever was in that band. Really, I mean, maybe on stage. I think I think that I didn't know what being a band leader was, and I think that I really rely on telepathy a lot with people, and that doesn't always work.
Right.
Luckily, in that band, everybody just kind of did their thing, and it just worked. Didn't have to like, uh, I don't know. I'm not good at designating. It's like it's crazy. When people have such opinions, sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, man. But I guess and the same token, I'm an opinionated person too. So, but yeah, I mean, the songwriting thing it's such a lifelong journey. And I remember the first songs I wrote having so many sections, and I had such a hard time getting rid of anything. And there were these little gems in there, and it's like, and I remember older cats being like, you're gonna learn how to like whittle away at this more as you get older. I remember being like, fuck that, at the time. They were right, man. They were right, and it's really, but yeah, the songwriting thing, and I've been doing a lot of that, lately, with the
Do you have
pandemic.
a? I'm
you
sorry. Go
know
ahead.
I was just saying, like, this past 2020, I think I wrote a lot, and I've been working on some Josh Dion stuff, aside from Paris Monster, which I haven't put out in a long time. So that's something I really want to do.
It's going to
Uh,
be solo, like a solo project.
I'm not sure, man, because some of the songs I'm writing they sound really cool on the solo setup, So I think it would be cool to like take a nod from like even that Nate Smith album where it's just drums. Have you heard that? It's so like,
I've heard clips. Yeah, I haven't heard the whole
yeah,
thing.
it Nate Smith has an album and it's like just grooves. It's like, and I remember it being on in a club and I was like, this is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
I just think, people are making some creative albums. So I think it'd be cool to do an album that's just the solo setup, like with very little overdubbing.
Cool.
But then there's the idea of like getting some money together and then hiring your favorite musicians, and we live, number one, you can do anything remotely. People living all over the world, but also New York still has such an amazing music community. When you get chills just thinking about like, oh, what if such and such played on this track, So I've never really played any of those cards before, or made an album like that, and that would be really fun, you know. But
Yeah, for sure.
it's only so
Well,
much time. So
I look forward to hearing it when you do. I'm going to get to Paris Monster in a second, but I want to talk about pre-Paris Monster. You were doing a lot of, aside from the Josh Dion band as a leader and uh, all of that, you were also doing a lot of stuff in the smooth jazz world, right? Weren't you playing a lot of like as a sideman, playing with a lot of smooth jazz guys, right?
okay, so what happened was I I met a guy named Chuck Loeb who
Mhm.
changed my whole trajectory, honestly. And God, I miss him, and I am so bummed we lost him a few years ago. Chuck was like a super special human who loved me and took me under his wing, and single-handedly introduced me to the New York studio slash fusion world. And the next thing I knew, I was, sharing the stage with a lot of my heroes, like the nerdy shit I listened to when I first discovered the Yellow Jackets, or like, Weather Report, or like, not, I wasn't playing with those guys, but I'm just saying like guys like that, like
Mhm.
Randy Brecker and Bill Evans and like, all of a sudden, and it's so funny how the Spyro Gyra, I played on a Spyro Gyra album. That was awesome. Um, And it's funny because smooth jazz, as terrible as it can be, and Chuck wasn't. Chuck was a superb guitarist. I mean, he could. We would play all kinds of bebop, and it was more of a commercial thing, I think, that was going on in a scene that they had, which was like kind of bizarre to be involved in. Like, you're just like, what is this? But yeah, like the gigs with Chuck were so amazing, and so from that I just met all these other people, and I don't think that I was ever like, I never did, because it's really R&B drumming and gospel kind of stuff. That's really what is kind of necessary for the gig, and like I kind of have that in my playing, but I also have the slow leave on thing, and that's not what that is. So I think sometimes people didn't quite know what to make of me, and I'd always sing one song every night. It was like, and people would go crazy, and they'd be like, "Who's that guy? Like, why the hell is he here?" But I got to like meet so many cool people, and it challenged me. I really needed it, man. I mean, like, because just like when I was in the fourth grade band and I didn't know how to end a song, like I didn't really know what a metronome was. I didn't know like tempos and shit. I did it all naturally. And then so I finally had to get my shit together and learn all this stuff, and trying to learn how to play tight and learn how to not fill too much and learn how to like play the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Same thing every night, or close to the same thing every night, and not just how you're feeling that night, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I liked being in rock bands because it was kind of like you just, there's a free element to it. You're like, oh, well, the Who did it. We can be loose. But with that smooth jazz stuff, it was like, a show. Break it down. And you're like, like it's like that kind of shit. And I'm like, that's not, I don't know if I'm kind of can do that kind of stuff. Luckily, the reason I got in with a guy like Chuck is because I had the jazz thing. Then I could like I had that background. And he was very eclectic. He had an eclectic taste. But anyway, it was weird, man. And I played tons of gigs, and it was a thing.
Yeah, it's great. It's a cool thing. And you traveled a lot with them, didn't you? Did a lot of touring.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing that Chuck did was he introduced me to Spain, which became like my favorite place in the world, and I've since gone to a lot of other amazing places, but there's like this just connection I feel with Spain. And I think a lot of it, I go back in my mind to that first trip with him. And I remember like driving like some 5-hour drive to get to northern Spain. And he had one of those Discmans, with like the 2 headphone jacks. And we listened to Donald Fagen, The Night Fly. And we were surrounded by these Spanish plateaus, and there was like no life for miles. It was just like, just in the middle of like, God's country. And like, I remember him showing me The Night Fly, and like, because he was coming, he really enjoyed that kind of production and that kind of slick side stick. Like he loved Steve Ferroni, and they all love Gad and Vinny. And it was kind of like to try to glean some of that stuff from those older cats.
Right. So you were kind of adapting on the gig as to what the gig really called for, right? As you were going,
Yeah.
you were starting to see the things that maybe you could adapt, or what was well required, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like they just want pocket, really, you know what I mean? And it's like, and it's so interesting when you think of someone like Steve Jordan, who he laid down great tracks with Schofield and like bands like, fusion bands, like bands who also had drummers who played tons of notes. Billy Cobham did the same gig, but Steve Jordan did the same gig. So what's it mean? Well, I mean, it means that you can just groove, and it's like people are happy. You know what I mean? It's and so I felt like most of those artists that I play with, like they loved that. If you did that and made it feel good, I remember nights where Chuck would turn around and say, "Whoa," and I knew it because I had the groove, and I remember being like, "I got it," and he would turn around, and we both felt it at the same time, and then I'd be like, "That's what it is. That's what a groove is,"
Yeah.
and then there were plenty of nights where it didn't happen, or they were nights where I had a private bartender, and then I got a talking to in the hotel lobby the next morning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's all a learning.
Play, please don't play that 16th note displays shit ever again.
That's funny. That's awesome though. But what a learning experience, you know, and it's like sink or swim, right? You're doing it and you're learning on the gig and you're, you know, he's digging you for what you got and you're also just sort of like melding in with and making a tight unit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Cool. So you were doing all this smooth jazz and all this stuff. Now comes the Paris Monster.
Right.
So how does this happen? Was this something you set out to do, or just you got to tell me what's the origin story of Paris Monster?
Dude, it's pretty funny actually because, and it happened slowly. It happened slowly. It was actually, I blame my wife, just like everything. She actually said, you need to do something totally different right now. She's like, you got to reinvent yourself and you got to start a band with Jeff where you just play keyboards and drums. And I was like, that's stupid.
Okay, introduce us to Jeff.
Jeff Crayley, who is my partner in the Paris Monster. I've known Jeff. He's happens to be Vinny Speranza's close friend. The drummer I mentioned earlier. They're both from the same area, upstate New York. And so I actually met Jeff in like 1999. Like I sat in on piano in some like jazz gig he was playing like in upstate New York. And we played Alone together. And yeah, it's like so weird, dude, how it all worked out. And also the fact that I knew that song at one point is hilarious. But then, so, and Jeff, you know, both of us were kind of like, you know, I was in between projects and kind of directionless, and I was doing gigs, and I had like I was using different guitar players in New York, and it just wasn't the same like without Dan. Like I realized, like, number one, I didn't want to be a leader. Like I fucking hated it. I was like, this is stupid. I didn't like
hate about it. Just like having all the responsibility, or like you said, delegating authority and shit.
I don't know. Like I had just kind of fucked up in my life. I don't know. It was just I was in this place where I was like, you know, people were coming out to see the gigs, and the musicians I was playing with were amazing and friends of mine. But at the end of the night, I'm paying them to play, and I don't know. It just didn't feel good. Like I was like, oh, I thought I wanted this, but I don't. You know, I don't. Maybe I'll be ready for that someday. But I thought, oh man, I want someone who's going to just be invested in it 100%, you know? Mm-hmm. And I realized like, this is not working. So I burned that to the ground. And then we started Paris Monster, and cause Jeff was kind of in a similar position. Like he had started doing this crazy shit with the bass. And I think that I just didn't want to be in a band with a guitar player because of like my relationship with Dan was so strong. I was like, I don't know if I can do it again like this. You know what I mean? If it's not going to be that. I remember like asking like other guitar players like to solo forever while I was trying to find that same thing, and it's like, you're not going to find it. So we started a band without guitar, and I remember we had like some gig that was a Josh Dion gig that was at a festival in Southern Jersey, and we were late to the gig, and we had like kind of barely rehearsed, and I had a Nord with me, and it was just really like kind of questionable. And we got up on stage, and we had like a full crowd festival, and when everything was going through the PA, it was just all of a sudden this fucking magic happened. Like, and we were just like, what the hell, man? You know, just the kind of just this power of the drums are going through the PA and like the keyboard, and even with the sounds kind of being slightly cheesy because it was a Nord, and I'm not a sound guy, and it was Jeff had just started to get into his pedals and stuff. Anyway, that's kind of where the whole thing started, and then Jeff got into this modular synth stuff, which I was not aware of at the time, and still know very little about. And he kept telling me, no, I'm getting this thing, like, trust me, it's like crazy, and it's like this like analog thing that we can play to. And then I got that Dave Smith mofo, kind of like, I got better at sounds, and I realized that my real my strength was synth bass, actually, and which was way closer to the drums, you know.
Yeah.
And I also played the keyboard too sometimes. And Jeff is a brilliant lyricist, so it all kind of came together.
So Jeff writes lyrics.
Yeah, he's the primary.
Both write lyrics, or he's the primary.
We do, but he writes the lyrics. Paris Monster is really Jeff's lyrics. You know, our writing styles. I mean, you know, Jeff is like my guru for the English language. You know, he really is like, he's a writer. You know, he wakes up in the morning, and I don't know, he's a writer. I don't even know if I'd say I'm a writer, like, when I see him. Like, okay. Do I want to write songs? Yes. Do I want to express myself? Yes. But like, he could write, you know, Jeff could write, you know, anything. He's a gifted writer, and I've grown so much from this collaboration with him. You know, a lot of times I have lyrics already when I write the songs, that we keep some of the stuff.
And before, well, let me ask you this, because before the Paris Monster, you had to have tried this, right? With playing keyboards, drums, and all at the same time?
A few times, man. But I mean, dude, there were some really terrible moments when I first started. I mean, it's kind of like, it's tough too, because sometimes I see how much it's happening now, and I'm like, I don't know if this is a good thing or not. You know, it really, it's such a fine line between bad and good. Like, if as long as the music's good, I don't think it's bad to do these things. Just like everybody's got Ableton, and everybody's got things now. Everyone's got things everywhere that do stuff, you know. So to me, it's like, as long as the music sounds good, it's cool. You know, yeah, you know, but I really, but yeah, I mean, it did come natural to me, because my piano skills were a certain thing that I had, especially right hand was really where all my technique was. And I only ever really played rhythmically based funk keyboard anyway. So once I put that with the backbeat, it just kind of all started to work, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what it feels like when I watch you do it. It's, again, this is another thing where it's not like you're doing two separate things independent of each other. It's all one thing that you're doing, and you know, it's they all facilitate each other. It's clear that it's all coming from one spot. And when you play with your right hand, you're playing really rhythmic, like a drum. It's part of the drum pattern. At least that's what it looks like to me.
It is. Sometimes it almost reminds me of like a bell pattern. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. And most of my patterns are just like eighth note-y kind of things like that, and fill in the spaces, and so I bought a delay pedal, because that is such a cool way of controlling the rhythm. You know, and you can get that kind of thing going. And then the synth bass, of course, is like super cool. And it was weird, because me getting into the synth bass, it meant that Jeff had to play the bass differently. So he started playing the bass like a guitar, you know? And so it created this vibe that, like, sometimes I wonder if we've even captured it correctly sometimes, because it's really garagey, and I really like it. Like, I like how his, you know, it's almost like tenor bass. I know that's not a thing, but you know, it's like the way that he plays.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just so cool, man. Watching him change his sound over the course of the band. And it's so bizarre, because of the internet with that band, we've gotten to travel so many places. And I had to learn how to set up a keyboard in a different venue every night, and like get a mix, and do that every night, man. You know? and you really do get good at it. You're like, it's time, man. And I've got to hear the modular, and I'm playing to the modular, which is like going through the monitor. Like, we don't have in-ears or anything. I think we're going to try that eventually, but like, I really do love the natural feeling of just the modular going through the wedge. And that's it, man.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the mechanics of it. Because I was going to ask you what you're running. You're not all synced up in Ableton with clicks and stuff. You're playing out of the wedge and you're just syncing it up. Yeah.
What I hear is, and then I'm just like, and then that's it, and then it's like the song. I mean, in the future, we can get more slick with our show if we do get in-ears and have a click. So that may be something that happens in the future. But yeah, it is not, it's not that complicated. We tell sound guys, we're like, dude, trust me, 5 inputs. That's it. It's like, or whatever.
It's great because really, like we were talking about, everybody has toys and everybody has things that do things, and Ableton Live and looping and stuff, and people aren't always sure that what they're hearing is being recreated. Everything's being created. There's no tracks. There's no extraneous stuff. You guys are playing with analog things. You're playing a real drum set. Everything's. You said he's on he's got a synthesizer, right? An analog synth, like arpeggiator type setup.
Yeah, it's a Euro rack, and he builds it. He puts the different modules in, and each one does a different thing, and they're like little characters. Like sometimes one of them is just going like some weird shit. I'm like, what the hell is that? Most of them are like, can do a hi-hat sound. He can make it sound like anything, man. It's like, and I started to like check out some of these like late 60s composers who were using modulars, like Morton Subotnick. There's an album called Morton Subotnick, Silver Apples of the Moon.
We played with when I was with Moby. He opened for us once with Silver Apple. It was a trip, and I hadn't heard of him at that time. And Moby was losing his mind. Because he hadn't performed live in forever, and he came out and did his whole thing. Yeah, it was.
That is insane. Yeah. Wow.
It was wild to watch him do it, man, because that was a whole other thing. That was before software that did everything for you. It's like tape recorders and stuff. And
yeah. Oh my God. I wonder if there's any footage of it, because I've never actually looked to see if that exists somewhere. I mean, it might as well be God talking to me. Like, I don't know how a modular works. Let's face it. Like, I'm like,
that's what I was going to ask. I mean, can you always recreate the same stuff, or do you have to set up different sounds each time?
He's got the modular set, so it's like loosely the same.
Okay.
But it is analog, so he has to fine tune it, and sometimes shit doesn't work,
Right.
And yeah, it's cool. Like, I mean, it's cool for me, and he's like kind of wrestling that thing while doing the other stuff he does. I mean, I think someone said it best when I explained Paris Monster at a Rockwood bar stool in like 2012. The guy I was talking to just goes, "Sounds like a lot could go wrong."
Yeah.
I was like, bro, that's the quote of the century for us.
That sums it up.
Yeah.
2012, that's how long you've been doing this for?
Dude, it started small. I mean, we started, it's so funny because it was so different than the other band I had, where it was just like, Paris Monster was like, I don't know, what do you call it? An art project or something at first. But we released that EP, and then all of a sudden, like, people started to come out to shows and people started talking about it. But I think more than that, peers liked it. Musicians liked it too. And like New York cats, like, talk about smooth jazz, like, all of a sudden avant-garde cats were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I dig Paris Monster." And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah, man, you guys hit it hard. When I, coming back to Buffalo and talking to some younger players, younger musicians, and they were like, talking in hushed tones about seeing the Paris Monster show and all this stuff, and I was talking to a guy today about it, and saying that I think you were playing Nietzsche's or something maybe in Buffalo. You know
Yes,
what I'm
dude.
talking about?
But you know what's funny? People would come out to that, and we had some hilarious shows there because that venue can be questionable at times.
To say the
Although
least.
I'll always love it though. I
Well,
really
since you've experienced it, then that will explain me, because that was like where I spent, I had a weekly gig there playing with a West African band, and like, back when I used to wear IOU t-shirts and had hair, and so that was like that was my home away from home. So yeah, you've experienced it all, you've smelled it all. It's the real place.
no, I remember doing a gig there like 20 years ago, and then I came back 20 years later, and I was like, it has not changed. This is so weird.
Nope, it's in that way. But the what I was getting at though is that you guys really have made quite a name for yourselves. There's people love you. You have a following. I texted you the one day I was on scrolling Facebook, and like Bootsy Collins, he retweeted something of yours, or he
Yeah,
shared your video, and I was like, yeah, Bootsy just shared your video.
it was so, dude. Right? That was crazy. Yeah, it's bizarre. We had some stuff like that happen, and yeah, I mean it's wild. I mean, I just want to keep building. I can't wait to get back because I feel like it's so different than what I ever thought it would be. And it really like it. I mean, this whole keyboard drumming thing, like I have to laugh, dude, because it's so true. People always say like, yeah, you never know how things are gonna end up, and you got to like go with it, And it's like, dude, I would have when we met back playing on Bleecker Street, like I would have never even seen this, like not even close, you know. And it's like it's so bizarre that that's what happened, Um, but in some ways, it's been really good for me because like, I really did have so many holes in my playing, like in terms of like it took me a long time to be able to hear harmony and stuff like that. Like I was, even though Catherine Nemasic taught me so much, like, you know, I couldn't like hear chords necessarily, and like, and all that shit. I've had to work on all those different aspects of music basically, because now I'm playing the fucking keyboard. So it's like you get better at that stuff, and you start to hear things, and like your pitch gets better because all of a sudden you're like, you're getting better, you're growing, and so it's kind of like, I feel like it was kind of like you said, trial by fire before, and like this was definitely like that. It's like, well, all of a sudden Jeff is playing a solo and I have to accompany him on bass, so it's like if I change the bass notes, that's a huge decision to make underneath him.
Right.
And he's like he's been playing his whole life, playing solos and knowing harmony is like what drums are for me. So to be able to open up my ears and to know what creates tension and like how, it's shit like that. It's really cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask if you practice it. Like, do you ever practice by yourself, like play scales with your right hand and while you play a dance beat or something like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's something, and people ask about what to do. Absolutely. I mean, keeping a beat and then just different groupings and scales. I mean, that's great because it all lines up somehow. You know what I mean? And whether they're groupings of 5 or like a 16th notes or whatever the hell they might be, work on your scales and work on the feel of what that is. If that's what you're into, that would be a really good thing to do. Practice with the metronome and then do that kind of stuff. You're making me want to. I haven't played in like a week. But yeah, it's all that kind of stuff. Working with the delay pedal, I'm always doing that now because to get that perfect is really kind of tough. It's tricky, A lot of times when Jeff and I track the keys and the drums live, and I don't change anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like that, like it is what it is, and that's what is there. A lot of times I like to do it not to a click too. The one song, A Vision Complete, like the song that a lot of people share and like, that was not to a click. and that was the performance you're hearing on the drums and the keys. That's just what went down. The vocals are overdubbed because you can't. It's hard to do that, you know.
Right. Right.
But yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's great, man. I mean, you guys, you so it sounds like a little bit that this was you went through a dark period before the Paris Monster happened, and your wife suggested that you do this, and you sort of followed you followed that path. You didn't know where the hell you were going, and lo and behold, you found the awesome thing, right? So it's almost like to thine self be true, right? You found where you needed to be just by
yeah.
going through that and listening to your wife.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, I did that thing. I'm glad I did that time. You know, it's really like, no, seriously. I mean, she's very wise. I mean, you know, it's really, it's crazy too, because I was the funk guy in high school and college. You know what I mean? Like, and like funk guys don't think other funk guys exist until they get to Bleecker Street and they realize that there are like 10 million funk guys. You know, but like playing synth bass and stuff, for me it was just like that was second nature. I mean, I listened to like, you know, all that stuff. So you're right, in a sense it was like, well, now I can do that, and I, you know, I don't have to worry about anything. And yeah, it's crazy how that works out.
Yeah, and then you got a lot of the attention of not just everybody else. I mean, you know, your peers and huge fan base, but then the drum companies and all that started to ask you to do a lot of drum festivals and things, right?
And that was kind of how the solo thing started. And it was also confusing because people thought that, you know, it was weird because, you know, yeah, that was bizarre. Like I didn't expect any of those videos to go, you know, viral or whatever the hell they were. I just woke up one day and it was happening because to me, that drum festival was just a gig I said yes to. They happened to be filming it. And so when they shared the video, you know, it started to snowball. So anyone who, so yeah, it was crazy. So anyone who thought that like, oh, this guy is like, she's an internet genius. It's like, no, like I had no concept of that. And I just got lucky. And all of a sudden, you know, it's just like, and I hate to make this comparison, but the jam band world, the smooth jazz world, the drum world, it is its own thing, dude.
Yeah.
All of these are microcosms. I mean, the drum world is something that I had never been introduced to. I have to tell you,
right.
Like when we were gigging back in the day, like I didn't know any of that stuff. And once all of a sudden these drum festivals started to offer me, you know, show slots, I was like, holy shit, what is this? You know, it was a whole education. And kind of coming back to where I started, because I'm all of a sudden surrounded by drummers, and it's like, well, what are you? You're a drummer, so, you know. And it was weird being the drum guy who played keyboards, and that was my shtick. So it was like, you know, it's bizarre, man, how it all comes back around like that.
I mean, it's amazing. And what's great is that it was, like you said, it was truly organic. You didn't like have some strategy to like put out videos and slam people with content. Somebody saw what you happened to capture, something awesome that you were doing, and share it, and it went viral that way.
Yeah. And I need to make videos. I mean, because I want to, you know, but none of those videos are mine. So but it was cool. I mean, it got the name out there, and we got a lot of offers to travel, and it helped the band, you know. And then I started to think that like the Josh Dion solo thing could be like a little more song based and kind of like a little quieter, so I'm working on that still. And I bought this Mellotron now that I'm working with, and stuff. And so there's like all kinds of stuff I'm working on. But Paris Monster is really like an edgy sound. It's good for live. It's good for a live show. It's got a rock element to it. It's funky. People can dance.
Visual. It's visual too.
Visual.
You guys look cool, and you have and I've been to a couple shows, and just the energy is palpable. You know, you guys are really bringing, and it's just fun to watch, and people can't help but get involved. So it's you definitely have something very cool happening, and I'm glad you do.
Thanks, Joe. And I got to tell you, it's hard out there. It's tough. There's so much to look at, and there's so many bands. I don't take it for granted when someone likes the band, because it's like, you're going out there and you're going to different cities and you're just hoping people show up, and you get some festival gigs, and it's like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you're just, we've taken it coast to coast now, and we have so far to go. So it really is, and we're still working on the show, and it's crazy, man. It's a crazy.
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to ask you, before the pandemic happened, what were you guys, did you have something planned, and things kind of fall through? What happened there?
Yeah, we had a bunch of gigs, and we kind of hit it hard for a couple of years, so we were both kind of burned out. But the gigs that we had, I think like the first gig was supposed to be in Sardinia, and it was like that was where all of it was happening. We were like, not happening.
Yeah.
So and it sucks, because we have some great friends over there, and it was like, but that didn't happen, and so we kind of hibernated for a while. But now we're working on the new album, and it's starting to come together, and but we're kind of, it's so funny, the pandemic has been so long that it feels like we're starting over, which kind of feels good in a sense. New album, kind of going to send it out to people and see, like, to get some kind of vibe going somewhere with some people, find someone who wants to work with us on it, and just kind of be patient and see what happens, man. But yeah, it's crazy, just kind of not having that. It just stopped.
Right.
It stopped for everybody, and we did have a streaming show at Rockwood last week that was like really great. It felt great. And so, well, we'll see, man.
Is that pretty much what all you've been doing? Have you guys been trying to put out any content like over the last year, or you guys just been chill?
I just started to get my whole home studio together. And I'm like, I'm putting up the soundproofing this weekend, and then once I get all that, I am going to set up some cameras, and it's like, like we were talking about before with just getting that whole thing together. I do want to get that together. I'm not technically advanced in any way, but I do want to get that together and play that game and be able to capture those things. So I don't know when that's going to happen for us, but definitely a new album and some videos, some creative videos, and maybe some live videos, and that kind of stuff. And I'm also interested in starting a Patreon soon, which I haven't, I've been talking about for a while, but
yeah, a lot of people are getting that together. I was talking to several different friends of mine that are doing the Patreon thing and all of that. And yeah, I mean, it's you have a fan base, and you have people that want to see what you're doing and support you, and it's definitely a good resource for us to have as artists.
And it's good to have like a daily routine of practice yourself. And then it's almost like we were talking about with the singing, drumming stuff. Sometimes you discover things that you can work on, and you're like, shit, this is like a good thing to share with people. Right. Singing a scale with a certain beat or whatever it might be. And then you're just like, this is an exercise. Yeah. Like, this is literally something that, someone else might find useful. So, in that respect, I think it's a good, healthy thing. And then, we can help each other out, so.
Absolutely. So where do you see us going? I know you said you got the new record coming. How do you feel we're going to come back strong from this pandemic? How much longer do you think we got?
Oh my God. I mean, people were saying they were going to start booking this summer. I don't know how that's going to happen. Yeah. I'm fine with holding off on the touring, to be honest. I really want to just keep writing and work on the album. Not only the Paris Monster album, but I'm working on some tunes myself, and so it's going to be a lot to get both of those things done. And
you're fine with hunkering down for a little while longer.
I am, just because like I've got the whole family thing going on now, and it's like, I'm working on. I'm finally learning how to engineer Pro Tools. I'm like, there's so much shit that I haven't known. So I'm learning about that now, and like going to be able to track remotely. And then there's so many things to work on, and so we'll see. I mean, you know, and I miss New York. We were talking about New York, and I miss that. And we talked about those nights on Bleecker, the 1 a.m. show and stuff. And it's like, you know, for me now, it's more like 55 Bar or Rockwood. I think those are probably two places I was playing the most. And just to be like 55 Bar, for instance, for me, that kind of culmination of like the what's the word, like the eclectic side of improvisational music, you know, like I started playing with Wayne Krantz
at the
55, and the Jim Campolongo trio became a huge part of my life the past 6 or 7 years I've been doing that gig. Those were huge gigs for me, like, you know, with the whole bringing me back to when I first got into jazz and wanted to play funk and all that stuff. And I miss all that stuff. I miss that New York vibe. I still love New York, and we have so many friends now who've moved to other places, and that's cool too, because I want to go to those cities too. But I really do miss the night.
Absolutely. And just so you're talking about Bleecker Street, you know, walking down there on any given night, and it was like a family reunion every night. The same people are out hanging, and you sit in and play, and there were all the different, and, you know, I mean, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you wonder how much of those places are going to survive and be around, you know, and be able to withstand it. And it would just be a tragedy if we lost all of these, or even any of these amazing venues, you know, with so much history and culture and all that stuff. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and we get to come out of this as unscathed as we possibly can.
Man, I hope so. And I hope it's like I hope it's a serious bounce back, you know, where because, you know, people are going to have new material, and like they're going to be hungry to get out there, and you know, people are going to want to go out, because I think I miss being in the audience more, even, you know, like there's something about that like that's brutal, not going to do that and having yourself like a nice beer and like watching a show, going to the Vanguard or something like that, or going to like a big rock concert. I don't know, man, you know, it's like I can't wait. So
I know it. So where can the people find you? Where are you located on social media, website? Where can they find you?
Well, you know, parismonster.com has our, you know, that's like the online store, our dates, our tour dates, and lyrics and stuff like that. You know, any of that kind of stuff is there. And then I'm most active on Instagram. And there's a Josh Dion account and a Paris Monster account. And
that's the Paris Monster, right, on Instagram?
Yeah, the Paris Monster. And you know, that's probably what we post on the most, but we're on all platforms. And
YouTube channel.
We do have a YouTube channel, and once we think things look and sound good enough, we will put something up on it again.
Awesome. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and it's just great to talk to you, man, and just learn all this stuff that I didn't know about. I didn't know about a lot of your coming up and all that, and it's just an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait to hear the next record, and I can't wait to see the stuff you start making when you get the home studio all set up and everything. And thank you again so much.
Dude, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, brother. We'll talk soon. All right.
Yeah.
Be well. Take care.